You notice how thoughts arrive like delayed rain. A cloud passes hours ago over the ocean, and only now the scent of wet salt reaches your street. Light behaves with the same patient delay, except its ocean is space and its raindrops are messages. You lift your attention, and you are already stepping backward. Every beam that touches your eyes has been traveling, not perched and waiting, but moving, steady as a heartbeat you barely hear. You do not meet the star, you meet its letter. The envelope is brightness, the stamp is distance, the postmark is time. You say the word far, but the sky quietly corrects you. You mean earlier. The moon speaks from a little more than a second ago, a quick whisper across the nearby dark. The sun greets you from 8 minutes in the past, the length of a calm sip of tea. A bright star might send you a story from hundreds of years prior, a history that left before your great-grandparents were born. A galaxy writes from millions of years behind your calendar. A light year is a compassionate unit. It does not ask you to imagine kilometers stacked to the ceiling of your mind. It asks you to imagine time walking. 1 light year is how far. A year of light can stroll, step by step, through emptiness that is not truly empty. You can feel that pace better than you can count it. The speed of light is fast in the way mountains are tall, beyond the habits of your day, but not beyond meaning. Across the space between stars, even that haste becomes gentle. A sprint turns into a pilgrimage. The universe sets the limit, and the limit sets the rhythm by which you see. You build your present out of arrivals. Outside your now is stitched from forgotten departures. The dome above you is a quilt of different yesterdays, sewn together to warm this moment. No single present exists there. It is a patchwork of delays. When you look up, you practice a kind of archaeology. The deeper you look, the older the artifacts become. Faintness is not a failure. It is a distance survived. A dim star is a story that has been on the road for a long time and still remembers you. Light travels as tiny packets, like sand grains that happen to glow. Each grain carries a piece of the scene that launched it. Some grains are scattered by dust, the way pollen drifts on a breeze. Some take detours around heavy things, following the curvature that mass draws into space. Most simply go, faithful messengers with patient feet. Your eye and your instrument are not just windows, they are clocks. When you open the shutter and leave it open, you lengthen your now. Your present becomes a cup collecting drops from many moments, summing them into a picture impossible in a quick glance. Waiting is a way of touching older light with more care. Even daylight carries history. The sun you feel on your cheeks started its surface journey minutes ago, and its deeper journey long before that, wandering through crowded layers until it found a path outward. By the time a ray warms your wrist, it has lived a life of departures and delays. Planets do not burn, they borrow. Their gentle steadiness is sunlight returned, late twice over. First from the star to the planet, then from the planet to you. Even a crescent is a calendar of geometry, a quiet map of where you, the planet, and the sun are paused in their motion. Sometimes a wandering point does not twinkle, and you learn it is a planet by that calm. Reflection has its own kind of honesty. You already know the difference between fast messengers and slow ones. Lightning sketches a bright vein. Thunder arrives after, softened by distance and air. So it is with the universe. Some messengers are quick, some slower or blocked, and your experience is the sum of their timings. Look closely at real time. When you speak to a friend far away, A small delay sits inside the conversation. Between you and a star, the pause is the conversation. The cosmos is a call that stretches across gulfs of time, and you answer with your gaze. Your body is comfortable with layered times. Your nails remember weeks. Your bones remember years. The iron within you remembers stars you never met. When you look up, the outer world's memory meets the inner one, and something in you nods. Of course, truth can be late. Sometimes you hear people say that the stars you see are gone, that you witness only ghosts. The gentler truth is that many are still alive, steady fires with long lifetimes. What you see is not their funeral. It is their portrait from earlier in the day. Yet some may have changed, swollen, dimmed, erupted while their earlier light continues to visit. You greet them as they were, even as they become what they will be. The night is not a mirror. It is a record. A mirror returns you to yourself instantly. The sky returns you to the universe slowly. There is kindness in the delay. It lets you hold the past without tugging at it, to cradle an echo without scaring it into silence. If you could fold space like cloth, you might bring two times together and compare them. Without that folding, you still compare by color and brightness and pattern. You see a star's hue lean toward blue or red and learn something about its heat and life. You see pairs and clusters and learn who travels with whom. Light does not only tell when. It tells how and what, if you are patient. Think of a lighthouse by the sea. Ships far away see the same beacon at different moments, each arrival making sense for the ship that receives it. The universe is such a lighthouse, except the ships are you and every creature that looks up, and the shoreline is everywhere. Your neighborhood of time depends on where you stand. You may wonder whether there is a universal now, a single drumbeat that everything obeys. On scales as large as the sky, the drumbeat loosens. What feels like a moment here is a chapter there. Simultaneity softens, like a strict rule turned into a suggestion. Your life still ticks with clocks. The cosmos writes with longer strokes. This does not make your present less real. It makes it richer. It stretches your sense of belonging from your minute to the ages that fed your minute. The tea you hold is warm because of light, and that light is news, and that news is late. Nothing is rushed. Even speed has patience at this scale. You can practice seeing time in ordinary ways. Watch the evening star appear while the horizon still holds color. Notice how its brightness steadies as your eyes adjust. Look later, and the star seems sharper. Look later still, and a faint smudge joins it, a cluster your pupils could not greet before. Dust between you and a star can redden the message. The way smoke can tint sunlight amber, air can twinkle the script, like heat above a road. None of this is deception, it is context. You correct gently, and the picture grows more honest. Clarity is not the absence of obstacles. It is tenderness toward what the obstacles do. When you hold a photograph of someone you love, you do not feel cheated because it is from a previous year. You feel gratitude that a version of them could cross time and meet you. Starlight is an album the universe offers freely, page after steady page. You leaf through with your eyes. You linger. You accept the lag as part of the gift. There is humility in realizing how much of what you know is hand-delivered by travelers you never see. There is also courage. You choose to live in a world whose truths arrive slowly. You give your attention, long enough for the quiet to gather into understanding. You become, in a small and human way, an astronomer of patience. Night teaches you patience with truth, and then your thoughts widen. If all-seeing is reading the past, what happens when a star ends? What becomes of its letters in the mail, the ones already on the road, the ones not yet written, the ones that will be written differently once the star changes? You feel the question open like a low tide revealing more shore. You do not hurry to answer. The night does not hurry either. It keeps sending, and you keep receiving, and in the space between those two acts, you rest. You rest inside the calm surprise that your present is built from earlier fires. You rest inside the truth that nothing arrives without traveling. You close your eyes, and the afterimage lingers, a warm echo on your lids. It, too, is a kind of delayed seeing, a small private sky where yesterday's rays finish their visit. The boundary between outside and inside softens. You become one more place where old light can land and be understood. When you open your eyes again, the same stars are there, steady notes in a patient song. You are ready to follow those notes, backward, to trace them to their instruments, to learn how a life of burning shapes a life of sending. The past tense of light invites you to the grammar of stars, and you accept the invitation with a breath. You start with a quiet, admitting, much of what reaches you is late. Starlight is a letter posted ages ago, arriving on an evening that no longer knows its sender. You unfold it, smooth the creases, and learn to read a life that is still changing elsewhere, or already changed. This is the first grammar of the cosmos. The present is braided with arrivals from the past. A star lives by keeping balance. Inward, gravity gathers. Outward, light pushes. You don't need equations to understand it. Think of a slow breath held between two needs, to rest and to rise. The breath holds for millions or billions of years, and in that holding, simple atoms are persuaded to become heavier, warmer stories. The star writes with fusion, turning the lightest ink into deeper script, while the surface glows with patient pressure. When the easy ink thins, the hand trembles. A sun like yours swells, as though memory has drifted to the edges. Redder, rounder, softer, it puffs its outer layers like a dandelion ceding itself to the wind. The core, meanwhile, gathers, itself tight, a pearl clenched at the center. There is no malice in this change. There is only a new balance, a new breath. Helium, once a product, becomes the fuel, and the script thickens into curved glowing lines. The goodbye of a modest star is not an explosion, but a release. The outer layers unbuttoned, drift, and glow as a thin, colorful planetary nebula, delicate and temporary. In the middle, the pearl remains, a white dwarf, a city-sized ember with the mass of a sun, so dense that a teaspoon would weigh like a mountain. It shines without flame, simply by cooling, like tea left on the table after guests have gone. The party is over, yet the warmth lingers. This ember cools for longer than your species has words. Over billions of years, it dims, sliding into colors you cannot see, and someday, so far from now that numbers grow shy, it will become a black dwarf, a quiet stone in the dark, no longer luminous, merely present. None yet exist. The universe has not had time to make them. The story is patient, and you live within the middle of its sentence, where endings still carry afterglow. Not all stars choose the quiet door. The heavy ones keep stacking elements in their cores until the stack can carry no more. Iron arrives, and iron is the period at the end of that paragraph. It gives no extra push. Gravity, long held at arm's length, steps forward. The core collapses in a gasp, so sudden it rings the entire star like a bell. The outer layers, shocked, rush outward as a supernovae, unsealing so bright it can throw shadows across faraway worlds. In that blast, the star finally opens its vault. Elements are hurled into space. Calcium for bones, oxygen for breath, iron for blood, gold for the stories you pin to your skin. Dust seeds the next generation of clouds. What looks like ending is harvest. Long after the flash fades, the wreckage expands as a glowing remnant. Its shockwaves kneading nearby gas like a baker folding dough, shaping the ingredients of future suns and unsettled planets. Sometimes the collapsed core does not shatter into nothing, but into more. It becomes a neutron star, a sphere the size of a city with the weight of a sun. Matter pressed so tightly that usual pictures fail. So you borrow metaphors. A mountain crushed into a teaspoon, a lighthouse whose beams you hear instead of see. Some spin so fast they sweep radio pulses like heartbeats pulsars, diming the galaxy with astonishing patience. Others carry magnetic tempers so fierce we call them magnetars. If the core is heavier still, it falls past every bargain. A black hole forms, not a hole, but a shore beyond which paths only go inward. The boundary has a beautiful name, the event horizon where light itself bows to gravity's insistence. You might imagine that is the end of a story, but it is truly a different way for a star to live. It eats, and as it eats, it sings. Matter spirals in heats, and the edge flares like a final, furious crown while thin jets lands into space, and still, the speech of the dead arrives. Telescopes record pulsars from pulsars like metronomes set for ancient music. Detectors catch the ripples of gravitational waves when compact remnants merge, like two bells thrown into a pond so heavy that the water remembers their fall. Kilinovae, those brief, rich merger salt space with rare elements, the ring on a finger, the wires in a circuit, the silent metal leafing in a book you will never open. In this universe, nothing generous is wasted. You wonder what it means to watch a portrait that is not the person anymore. The answer is tender. The portrait is not a lie. It is a message still on the road. In cosmology, distance is just another word for time. A nearby galaxy is an earlier version of itself. A young cluster is only a younger rumor. The sky is a museum, arranged by lights, travel time, and the docents of photons, saying, "This is how I remember it." Memory alters what remains. Around white dwarfs, leftover planets may survive in cold ellipses, or they may drift inward, torn into rings of dust that glow in the infrared. A faint firelight for anyone patient enough to wait. Around neutron stars, there can be strange companions. Husks of worlds that endured the blast and now orbit a beacon. Even a black hole can carry a halo of interrupted meals, an appetite drawn as art by the streams it cannot quite finish. Think of the carbon in your cells, the calcium in your teeth, the iron tying oxygen to your blood. These are letters written in stellar script, ferried to your corner by explosions and drifting time. You are a page in the stars' afterlife, not a separate book. When you breathe out, some of that ancient grammar leaves you, and the cycle continues, not only in poetry, but in atoms. You become interlaced with the lives and deaths you study, and the border between out there and in here thins. The universe keeps a long calendar. White dwarfs dim over tens of billions of years, their heat smoothed out until they resemble forgetfulness. Neutron stars slow their spins. Their beams soften. Their crusts crack less often. Black holes leak, in theory, by a quantum trick so slow that the math hardly believes itself, a patience on the scale of future silence. Meanwhile, new stars ignite in old clouds, and the brightest hurry toward spectacular conclusions, because bright lives can be brief. During all of this, light never stops being a courier. It slides through lenses of gravity, bending around massive bodies so that you can see multiple images of the same ghost, like a memory retold by different witnesses. It scatters from dust, making halos, and when a supernova flares, its echo can arrive twice first, straight, then, after a detour, like a postcard followed by its shadow. The universe does not mind repeating itself when repetition deepens understanding. So, how do you cradle a brightness that is already gone? You hold it by learning its language. You say white dwarf and picture a diamond cooling in the dark, an ember that refuses drama. You say neutron star and feel the tick of a clock that once was a sun, keeping time for lost oceans and invisible cities. You say black hole and imagine a boundary you cannot cross, yet whose edges shout with light as matter makes its final, eloquent turn. Naming becomes a handle, not a cage. You also hold it by letting it change you, knowing that the light in your eye began in a furnace long vanished, adds a sweetness to the present. It loosens your grip on urgency. It suggests that endings are not the opposite of life, but another way life continues, by giving, by spreading, by becoming a seed catalogue rather than a wall. Even the quietest remnant is a teacher. Pressure can bear the unimaginable. Balance can last. Release can make beauty that travels farther than intention. At night, when the sky is clear enough, you can practice this kind of listening. Not with binoculars, not even with names, but with willingness. You accept the delays, the variations, the faintness. You let the afterglows find you at their own pace. Somewhere, a supernova that burst before your language existed is still painting the surrounding dust, somewhere to compact remnants spiral together. Their approach making ripples that no eye can see but careful instruments can hear. The living afterlives of stars are not superstitions. They are physics with good manners. They do not cancel what came before. They extend it. A star that no longer fuses still warms a story. A remnant that no longer shines still steers other paths. Between departures and arrivals, you are simply one listener among many, tracing the consistency of change. This steadiness of impermanence becomes its own comfort, a lullaby made of evidence and of time. And if sometimes sadness rises because so much of what you love is already altered by the time it touches you, you can lay that feeling beside the truth that you, too, alter what you touch. You turn late light into present care. You turn distant deaths into local breath. You learn to meet the universe halfway. It brings you messages, and you answer by continuing what they began. In this conversation, nothing is wasted, not even the weight, and hope is a physical quantity. So the stars do live after they die. They live through the gifts they scatter, the remnants they hold, the curvatures they impose, the echoes they send. They live in your marrow and in the electronics on your desk. They live in rings around quiet cores and in narrow jets. They live in the calendars of future astronomers who will trace the last warmth of cooling dwarfs and the last whispers of shrinking holes. Most of all, they live in light that keeps its appointments late. You keep saying the word far as if it points outward, yet it opens backward, like a quiet hinge into yesterday. Light travels with patient discipline, never arriving early. So when you reach with your eyes, you stretch not only across space, but across the moments that space has kept folded inside it. Distance becomes the tenderness of delay, and you learn to read delay as time, a language written in small arrivals. When you say distant, you are saying earlier, and the night nods, pleased that you have heard its grammar. A light year sounds like an engineer's yardstick, but it is really a year of lights walking step after step at the fastest pace the universe allows. It is not a trophy to hoist. It is a promise the cosmos made to itself. Information must take the long road. When you whisper 10 light years, you are naming 10 birthdays of a photon, 10 patient orbits of your planet while that single messenger crosses the dark. You are naming the earlierness of what you see, the gentle truth that seeing is a reunion with what has already happened. You practice with small distances, the kind your body can hold. The moon is about a heartbeat away, the light that paints it for you left when you were still finishing your last thought. The sun takes 8 minutes before its warmth reaches your skin. A bright nearby star is a thread pulled from a decade ago. Andromeda is a letter posted when early humans were learning the names of fire. Each distance is a time stomp, and the night is a cabinet of dated envelopes. You open them slowly, careful with the edges. This is why a telescope feels like a time machine. It does not move you anywhere. It simply lets more of the old rain fall into your hands. Each photon that lands on a mirror carries a postmark, clue to when it started, how its color stretched along the way, whether gravity bent its path around some massive, unseen shoulder. You cradle these clues like seashells, with faint inscriptions. You do not rush them. You listen, and the listening becomes a way of traveling without leaving your chair. But how do you know how far the letter has traveled, and how long ago it left? You start with the simplest trick. Hold your thumb out, close one eye, then the other. See the jump. That little shift is a tiny geometry lesson called parallax, the universe's wink. Earth does the same as it orbits. 6 months apart, your planet stands on opposite sides of its path, and nearby stars seem to nudge against a steadier wallpaper. From that nudge, with patient triangles, you measure the neighborly few. It is humble, but it is honest. Light does not simply arrive. It thins as it spreads. Picture ripples widening on a pond, the same energy stretched across larger and larger circles. The brightness you receive is a diluted memory, softer the farther it has traveled. Observers fold this thinning into their recipes, knowing that distance drapes every beam like a shawl. They look for lanterns of known strength, steady lighthouses whose true glow is familiar, so they can judge how far the fog has dimmed them. Some stars keep time by brightening and dimming, their steady heartbeat revealing their true power. Others end in predictable flares. These regularities become rulers. The farther you peer, the older the universe becomes, and light itself tells you this in the language of color. Imagine a violin note drawn longer and longer until it falls into a lower tone. The universe expands, and in that expansion, the waves of light are stretched to, reddened, cooled, lowered in pitch. This is not makeup. It is the reach of space growing between crests, the way a painted road line looks wider as the asphalt is pulled apart. Measure the stretch, and you measure the time spent traveling. Color becomes a clock you can hold to. Your eye dots, sometimes gravity adds its handwriting. Massive galaxies and clusters are not only piles of stars. They are dents in the fabric that light must cross, bowls carved into the tablecloth of space. When a beam skims such a bowl, it curves, and to you it can make two images of the same distant object, or an arc like a ring of glass around a lens. Gravity is a patient glassmaker. From the curve, you infer the hidden mass, the invisible anchor your eyes cannot grasp directly. Even the bending becomes a ruler, another way time leaves fingerprints on distance. There is an edge to what you can know, not because the universe lacks generosity, but because time and speed have set their boundary tape. Beyond a certain distance, seeing turns into the hush of not yet. The earliest light that can possibly reach you today left when the universe was newborn. Its glow has cooled into a faint whisper that hums through everything like the background sigh of an old room. That whisper is not a word. It is a temperature, a low murmur of photons that have been traveling so long they have forgotten their first color. Yet they still arrive, patient as dust. Distance teaches you humility. You think of now as a flat plate, but it is a bowl with a slope. Your present gathers light that left at many different moments. A galaxy in one corner of your gaze is older than a galaxy in another, yet both arrive together like two snowflakes that began from different clouds and land at the same time on your sleeve. The present is not a point. It is a collage of arrivals. You live inside that collage without noticing, the way a fish lives inside water without needing to name it. And then there is the quiet arithmetic of memory. A photograph is light that once bounced off your face and was trapped, a small vault for yesterday's photons. When you hold it, you are holding a past you, captured not in ink but in the very echo of light. The distance between you and that moment is simply the number of seconds you have lived since the shutter side. You are a moving observer. Your own timeline has parallax too. Close one eye of memory, then the other, and feel how the scene shifts as you change your stance in time. All of this, the geometry, the echoes, the stretching rests on a single kindness. Light speed is finite and faithful. If it were infinite, the sky would be a mirror of the present and history would be dark. Because it is limited, the dark becomes legible. You can read the world the way you read tree rings, not by cutting it open, but by accepting that every ring of distance is a ring of time. The cosmos keeps its diary in kilometers and seconds and lets you browse with your eyes. You turn the pages by waiting. You begin to notice that questions about where quietly become questions about when. Where is that galaxy? It is when the universe was younger and denser and more earnest. Where is that star? It is when your grandparents were children. You say here and mean now. You say there and mean then. The map and the calendar trade glances across your desk, agreeing to share the same paper. Directions become tenses. Coordinates become dates. The legend in the corner is labeled with time. When you look deeper, you learn to walk the ladder the sky provides. Near steps, the thumb's small jump. Middle steps, the rhythm of pulsing stars that confess their wattage with their tempo. Far steps, the predictable flares of dying suns, and beyond them, the color stretch of expansion itself. Each rung is a trust exercise, a hand offered from one scale to the next. You climb, and the air gets older. With care, you turn brightness and color and curvature into dates, and you lay those dates like breadcrumbs on the floor of the dark. This ladder lets you do a kind of archaeology without shovels. You dust off the light from long-gone structures and reconstruct their bones. You weigh a galaxy by how fast its stars dance within it, and you weigh the invisible sea between galaxies by how it slows the dancers. even the spaces between things, have character. Light tastes the flavor of the void and tells you if it was thin or thick along the way. In this manner, absence becomes data, and silence becomes a statistic only, to say that quiet can be measured and honored. There is comfort in the limits. A horizon is not a wall, it is a shoreline. You can stand at it with your eyes and listen to the soft surf of the earliest light. Beyond it, more sea exists, but you accept that its waves cannot reach you yet. Acceptance is not surrender, it is rhythm. The cosmos hums on, and you hum with it inside your small room, holding messages with patient hands. You are included in a circle whose boundary recedes as time advances. A moving edge that keeps inviting you to return tomorrow and learn a little more. You do not have to keep every number at the front of your mind. It is enough to feel the principle. Settle like a blanket. The deeper the distance, the older the news. The night is a library organized by delay. You wander down aisles that run not left and right, but backward. You pick a shelf of faint galaxies and read them as if they were letters from a family whose surname is Light. You pause, you breathe, you turn a page that took millions of years to arrive in your palm, and you understand it softly, without hurry. So you soften your questions. Instead of asking how far, you ask how early. Instead of asking how big, you ask how long this message has been on the road. You close your eyes and picture each photon as a bead on a thread, the thread stretched, sometimes bent, sometimes split and rejoined, but always carrying a story from then to now. You hold that bead to your ear like a shell and hear a hum that is not from the ocean, but from time itself, passing through space. You feel, in your quiet bones, that distance is a soft synonym for before, and that you are always arriving. For now, you practice listening without sound. Light has a volume knob, and distance turns it down with a steady hand. A whisper from a far lamp is not timid. It is softer because it has been shared across a larger room of night. Brightness fades. The way ripples flatten on a pond. The same push spreads wider, and each ring carries less height than the one before. It is a quiet, patient education for your eyes. Your body already knows this rule. Hold a candle near your palm, and your skin understands heat and glare. Step back, and the warmth loosens, not because the flame has changed, but because its glow must comfort more space. A star does the same. The same fire writes itself on ever larger spheres as it travels, and the ink thins with honesty. The sky teaches this without hurry. The farther a source, the more it must divide itself to reach. Its light is not depleted, it is distributed. Picture rain across a field. The more acres it must touch, the less each leaf receives. What you call faint is not failure. It is generosity stretched thin, a gift made wide. Faintness, then, is a clue. It speaks of how long the road has been, and sometimes of how modest the lamp is at its heart. Two stars can look equally gentle, for very different reasons. One may be close and quiet, another may be remote and fierce. You learn to read more than brightness, alone the envelope and the handwriting, not just the ink. Color, slow motion against the distant background, and companionship with other lights become context, soft notes that help you sort nearness from might. Your eyes also adjust their way of hearing. In deep darkness, looking a little to the side of a dim smudge makes it easier to see. You are not imagining this. The parts of your eye that favor faintness work best off-center, trading fine detail for sensitivity. You practice a kind of gentle attention, letting the object rest near the edge of your gaze. And the smudge steadies like a friend who relaxes when you stop staring. Time helps too. If the message is quiet, you simply give it longer to arrive. A camera's eye left open allows night to pour in one drop at a time. A minute gathers more drops than a second. An hour gathers many more. The picture brightens not by shouting, but by patient counting. You are not making the source louder. You are holding your cup still beneath its steady rain. Even without instruments, you notice how the world dims what passes through it. Near the horizon, light must walk through more air, each step scattering a little, softening a little, reddening a little. That low star looks tired not because it is ending its day, but because your line of sight asks more of it. Overhead, the path is shorter, the syllables crisper. Between stars, space is not truly empty. Dust and gas appear like a thin fog across long distances. Their grains are small, but time is long, and the small adds up. Blue notes scatter more than red ones, so the message arrives with a warmer tint than it began. You learn to correct gently in your mind, the way you would adjust for tinted glass, and what remains feels closer to the true voice of the source. Some faintness belongs to the sender. Not every lamp burns with the same heart. Tiny, cool suns glow with calm light even nearby. Immense, hot furnaces shout their presence from far away. One idea describes how much the source produces. Another describes how much reaches you after spreading and softening on the road. You carry both ideas without naming them, the way you carry both the warmth of a stove and the feel of where you are standing in the room. Comparison becomes a quiet craft. You choose references lights, trusted by many eyes, and grade others against them, not with hard judgment, but with gentle calibration. Numbers help, but they are not cold here. They are footprints in dew, traces of how your seeing has walked. A step brighter, a step dimmer reach. Step is a rung on a ladder that lets you climb the night. Your world adds a background hush to every message. Moonlight, city glow, and the air's faint grey veil. The darker the backdrop, the easier it is to hear the whisper. Up high, the air is cleaner. Below, it is busy with dust, moisture, and human reflections. On clear nights, you feel that truth, like cold water. You learn to separate the whisper from the murmur. The whisper is the source. The murmur is everything else. Listening for the whisper is a habit of patience. You keep watch long enough that the random rise and fall of the murmur evens out, leaving the persistent note intact. In your life too, some truths are audible only after the surrounding noise has had time to cancel itself. Faintness is not only about points. Some things are extended nebulae, galaxies, soft clouds printed on the sky. For them, distance changes size as well as brightness. A far cloud may look smaller and dimmer, yet its milky glow per small patch stays much the same over nearby reaches where space behaves simply. You feel this when a misty patch keeps its softness even as it shrinks with distance. The softness is part of the object's signature. Sometimes, though, the fabric itself enters the story. On the larger scales, where the universe's own stretching becomes part of the path, even that softness thins more than ordinary distance would predict, and the color leans redder. You tuck this thought away like a note in the margin, a gentle arrow toward later pages where expansion will have its say. Your attention becomes cartography. You map by brightness the way a hiker maps by contour lines. A sudden drop in glow marks a lane of dust. A gentle shading marks the edge of a cloud. Faint stars crowd where the Milky Way thickens, like far city lights clustering along unseen streets, where faintness increases smoothly across the sky. You suspect distance. Where it increases patchily, you suspect obstacles. The night grows legible once your eyes learn the symbols. There is kindness in the eye's limits. If you could see every weak thing at once, the sky would be a solid haze. Limits carve pathways through the overwhelming, letting structure reveal itself in layers. First the brightest beacons, then the patterned clusters, then the thin silks. Of nebula trillia arrives when you are ready to honor it. You notice that a star near the zenith twinkles, less than one near the horizon. The shimmer you call twinkling is air in motion, bending the path of light by tiny amounts that change from heartbeat to heartbeat. Faint signals suffer more from this mischief because there is less of them to average into steadiness. Telescopes answer by waiting, by choosing calm nights, by stacking many moments so brief distortions cancel. You can answer in a similar way. Do not demand instant clarity. Let time do its smoothing work. Even your instruments practice gentleness. They do not grab light, they gather it. Mirrors offer a larger net to catch more of what already falls. Sensors do not shout at arrivals. They count them quietly, honoring each one. The result is not a louder truth, but a better listened one. Technology at its best is disciplined patience. What, then, do your numbers really mean? A measure of faintness is not a value stamped on a star. It is a description of a meeting between you and that star. Change the distance, the air, the dust, the time you wait, and the meeting changes. The star is what it is. Your reading is how and when you approach it. The humility of this difference keeps your science soft and honest. You can test your understanding with a simple ritual. Step from a lit room into a dark yard. At first, only the main notes reveal themselves. One bright planet, a few crisp stars. Wait, and more appear, as if the sky were arriving in installments. In truth, the sky was always there. You are the one unfolding. The faintest arrivals feel like rewards for your patience, which they are. There is quiet joy in rescuing small signals from the general dusk. A shy galaxy, a new comet, a star that slowly brightens and dims with its own rhythm. Each discovery is something that would have remained hidden without care. The night is generous, but it prefers to give at a pace that matches your willingness to be still. At last you see faint light for what it is. Survival made visible. Every tiny packet of light that greets you has avoided absorption, slipped past, scattering, crossed emptiness, and kept its direction long enough to carry a message. Its quiet is not weakness, but proof of endurance. You meet it with the respect. You give a letter that has crossed oceans and still bears salt on the envelope. Follow this practice, and the night grows more articulate. The sky is not only a place of blazing statements, but of murmured truths. You are not only a seeker of fireworks, but a collector of embers. In the hush, small meanings come forward. The dim smudge is not an error. It is a doorway into distance. And, as you linger at that doorway, another kind of reading begins to call. Faintness tells you how far and how troubled the road has been. But color tells you something else. The temperature of the lamp, the flavor of its fire, the quiet music of its heat. Your eyes, already tuned to whispers, prepare to learn a new alphabet, the one written in shades. You begin with a gentle noticing. Color is a kind of temperature your eyes can feel. A warm cheek leans pink, dawn tilts gold. The deep night, far, from city lamps holds a blue that seems to breathe. You already read this language without study. Tonight you let it widen, until starlight becomes a slow thermometer. Light behaves like ripples moving through a vast, invisible lake. Some ripples are packed close together, urgent and quick. Others are spaced farther apart, strolling instead. Of sprinting, the close ripples carry more push. Your eyes translate those into shades we call violet and blue. The strolling ones arrive as orange and red. You do not need symbols to trust this. You have watched iron pass from dull to red to white as heat climbs. Stars write this rule on the dark. The hottest glow blue-white, sharp as a new spark. Cooler ones rest in orange and red, like coals banked for the night. In between sits the sun, soft and pale, a balanced flame. If you linger with the dome above you, you can sort the heavens. By hue, the way you might sort breezes, by feel. Brisk blues, steady whites, mellow ambers, comforting reds. Temperature is not first a number. Human signs often paint red as heat and blue as cold. The cosmos smiles and answers, it depends. For light itself, the bluer ripples carry more energy each. The redder carry less. A blue star crowds its glow. With quick strokes, a red star lays out longer lines. Hold a prism to a thin beam, and the meaning opens into a rainbow. Long, lazy reds at one end. Tight, keen violets at the other. Warm a dark bar in a room with no light and watch its story. First a deep cherry, then brighter orange, then pale, almost white. The script is the same one stars recite on their surfaces, where heat is crowded enough to glow. Stars do not sit inside ovens. They are ovens made of falling and shining in balance, so their colors speak for millions or billions of years. Your eyes are good instruments, but they grow steadier with help. Spread starlight into a thin rainbow and notice how much of the glow gathers at each tint. A balance tilted toward blue hints at a hotter skin. A balance weighted toward red hints at a cooler one. The rainbow becomes a slow musical scale. You listen for which notes arrive louder, and let that melody stand in for temperature. Travel edits color, so you learn to undo the edits. Dust between the stars steals a little blue. The star appears redder than it truly is. Your own air does. This at sunset, scattering blues to the sides and leaving honey and rose for you to admire. To read temperature honestly, you peel away the haze like cleaning glass, until the light's original leaning returns. Within the rainbow lie thin, dark threads, penciled like delicate comments. They are tiny sips of light taken by specific atoms in a star's outer layers. Warmth shakes those atoms into different moods, and the sips they prefer shift and widen. Even without naming the elements, you understand the picture. A livelier crowd hums at a higher pitch, and the music leaves. Different marks. Temperature pushes on those threads, and the threads whisper the push back to you. Motion adds another tilt. A star drifting toward you bunches its ripples and looks a touch bluer. Drifting away, it stretches them and leans redder. The shift is small to the eye, but precise ears, careful instruments, hear it clearly. To take a star's true temperature, you listen for motion first and dust second, and then you invite color to answer. What remains after those courtesies is the star's own heat, standing in honest light. Some stars breathe. They swell and shrink with a steady rhythm. When the surface expands, it cools a little and the tone warms toward amber. When the surface tightens, it heats, and the tone slides toward white or blue-white. Watch patiently, and you can feel the pulse as color. The timing becomes a clock written in shade. It is not a trick. It is the way heat, size, and light share a single conversation. At the surface of a star, from the ground, your air makes the sun look slightly yellow because bluer strokes scatter away. From beyond the air, the sun stands closer to white. Cooler, small stars wear tangerine and brick. The gentlest, too cool to shine much for your eyes, glow mostly beyond red. Special cameras catch those hidden embers and map their warmth, a reminder that color extends farther than sight admits. Heat keeps talking outside the visible doors. A young star may wear a gauze of dust. Light scatters off the veil and softens, like a lamp behind fabric. Older stars may spin spots into view, cooler patches that make the tone sway as the star turns. None of this undoes the main sentence. It adds dialect. Heat still bends color the same way. You just learn to recognize the accent of each circumstance. Before you settle on a translation, clouds in space speak temperature and tint as well. Gas, shaken hard by nearby glare, glows in particular reds and greens, the signature warmth of certain atoms. Shocked fronts where winds collide can shine blue-white, crisp with energy. Elsewhere, dust warmed gently glows beyond red, a campfire for eyes that can see that far. Walk the spectrum end to end, and you keep meeting temperature, dressed in different clothes, but telling the same truth. Set two stars side by side, blue-white and an orange, and feel more than hot versus cool. You sense tempo. Blue-white burns through its fuel quickly, bright and brief. Orange sips slowly and lasts. Color not only names present heat, it hints at time. You are reading rhythm, not just temperature, and the rhythm says something about how fast a star lives and how long it will keep its steady letter writing. As you practice, you become part meter, part poet. You tune your seeing to careful tools, the way a musician tunes a string, comparing feeling to measurement until they agree. The sky's palette begins to sound like temperature spoken softly. Blue whispers, I am hotter. Red murmurs, I am cooler. White balances between. Knowledge does not chase comfort away. It lays down beside it and lets your breathing slow. Humility keeps the reading clean. Color can mislead when you rush. Distance, dust, motion, and the quirks of eyes complicate the first impression. So you cross-check. You stretch the rainbow fully. You listen along its whole length instead of trusting a single hue. Patience turns a guess into a measurement. Temperature becomes less an answer and more a way of paying attention that steadies the mind and makes the night feel friendly. Brightness tempts confusion. A nearer red giant can outshine a far blue spark, and your first instinct may be to call the brighter one hotter. But brightness is a mixture of size, distance, and heat. Keep the jobs separate. Let color tell temperature. Let brightness speak of reach and scale. With that discipline, the sky stops playing tricks. It becomes a page you can read, slowly, accurately, and with pleasure. Eventually the method feels intimate. A star is no longer a dot, but a story told in tone. You picture its ripples crowded, tight, or spaced long. You remember the penciled threads atoms leave in the rainbow and how they tilt with heat. You correct for dust. You check for motion. Only then do you settle on a number, and the number arrives as a kind of summary, one respectful sentence after a long conversation your eyes have conducted with color. Close your eyes now and keep the palette. Behind your lids, a slow gradient rises. Deep red, then copper, gold, white, blue, white, and finally violet memory. Each step matches a warmer skin. You also remember that beyond violet and beyond red, the spectrum continues, where human eyes do not go, but warmth still speaks. Instruments lend you hearing there. The unseeable parts of color become part of your understanding, extending your reach without hurrying your mood. Tomorrow, you might compare a star's hue to a trusted lamp. Next week, you might let a computer listen to the rainbow while you listen to rain. But for this hour, you keep it inward. Color is a felt temperature first, a measured one second. Learning can be quiet and exact at once. You rest in that truth, and feel oddly warmed by knowledge that refuses to rush. Step back once more, and the whole sky looks like a field of thermometers. Star nurseries shine with pale blues and greens. Elder neighborhoods relax into orange. Dusty rivers braid through them, reddening what lies beyond. The Milky Way becomes a slow current whose colors trace where heat gathers, where it hides, where it softens. The script is legible to anyone willing to read slowly, to breathe with the rhythm the night provides. So you return to the first noticing. Color carries temperature your eyes can feel. Now the noticing is steadier, like a held note. You can hold a hue and sense the warmth it implies. You can peel away what distance and dust add. You can hear when motion leans the tone, and you can refuse to let brightness impersonate heat. You keep reading the quiet spectrum. The star is no longer decoration. It is a warm letter, written in shade, addressed to your patient attention. You start with a tiny motion, a shy nudge in your vision. Hold your thumb at arm's length and rock your gaze from one eye to the other. The world slides a hair's breadth. The shift is small, but it is honest. In that slip you find the first rung of a ladder that has no wood, only patience. The night allows you the same trick. A nearby star twitches against a steadier backdrop when Earth moves from one side of its path to the other, and the twitch becomes distance. Space rewards humility. Short baselines first, short reaches first. You sketch triangles out of light, the way surveyors once stretched ropes across fields. Except your field is the sky, and your rope is months of orbit. The angle is tiny, like a whisper you almost miss, yet it is enough. With this, you weigh the nearness of cosmic neighbors. From those neighbors, you find second rungs lamps, whose behavior is trustworthy, and you climb by handing certainty upward, palm to palm. Brightness becomes a teacher. A lantern glows fiercely at its source, but the farther you stand, the more the glow thins, spread over larger circles like ripples on a pond. You respect the arithmetic of distance, if you know how strong the lantern truly is. You can measure how much the road has stretched simply by how faint the light has grown. The night is generous with lanterns if you listen for their rhythms. Some stars keep time with a breath you can see. Their light swells and softens in a steady tempo, like tides in the sky. The longer the breath, the stronger the star. The stronger the star, the farther you can hear it. So you watch the beat, and from that pulse you infer true power. From your first rung, you calibrate this pulsation rung, and the ladder becomes 2 steps taller. Sometimes the dark hosts a reliable flare, a bright farewell that reaches across galaxies with the discipline of a well-tuned bell. When such a flare appears, you read its peak against rules you have already learned. The flare is loud but brief, so you prepare by knowing your earlier rungs well. In the overlap where both the heartbeat stars and the farewell bells can be heard, you tune the ladder. making sure each rung meets the next with a firm hand. Not every rung is a clock or a bell. Some are textures. A city scene from nearby breaks into windows and balconies. From far away, it smooths into a quiet block of tone. Galaxies behave this way too. Their graininess shifts with distance. Measure the grain, and you infer how far the city of stars has been set from you. Other rungs are thresholds. Old, swollen stars brighten to a well-known crest and will not cross it. Like waves that rise to a polished lip and spill. Find that lip, and you have another measure. Sometimes motion itself offers a ruler. A spiral of stars rotates, and the speed of its spin whispers the heft wrapped in its arms. Compare that speed to the glow, and you earn another estimate. A way to guess how far a whirlpool of suns must be to look as dim as it does. Patterns etched into the spacing of galaxies, and the delay between echoes bent by gravity, become quiet yardsticks. Different instruments that play the same slow song, distance built from small shifts. The universe is not a tidy lab. Dust veils and distorts. Light can be reddened by both the thinness of cosmic stretching and the smoke of interstellar rooms. Lenses of gravity can amplify a candle and trick your eye with extra brightness. Instruments age, calibrations drift, so your ladder is not a rigid scaffold. It is a woven rope, braided from many strands, so that if one frays the others still hold. You learn to love error bars the way sailors love weather forecasts, not as failures, but as guidance. Overlap is your safeguard. Each method leans into the next, where both can work. You measure some nearby stars by their twitch, then also by their pulse, and you ask for agreement. You measure some distant galaxies by their farewells, then also by the hush of their grain, and you ask for harmony again. When discord appears, you do not panic. You sit with it like a knot in thread and tease it gently, asking whether dust was thicker than you assumed, whether a lens bent the light more than you guessed, whether a quiet bias hid in your instruments. Habits. Underneath every calculation lies the same kindness. Information must travel at a finite pace. Because light takes time, difference accumulates into meaning. Small shifts become sentences. Faintness becomes paragraphs. The expansion of space stretches each wave, lowering its pitch, so color joins your ladder. Measure the stretch, marry it to the rungs you have already tested, and distance emerges again, written in hues. You do not need to name each technique, to feel the harmony. At the benchif, you can call a mirror in the night a bench you practice catching photons like rain. You keep the mirrors quiet, the detectors cool, the clocks steady. You take the sky twice, thrice, again, because repetition sands the rough edges off chance. In the morning you do not count trophies, you count overlaps. The confidence you seek is not bravado. It is the stillness that arrives when many small truths agree. What makes this a ladder and not a pile of sticks is the sequence. First the nearby, by their tiny winks. Next the timekeepers by their measured breaths. Then the one-time bells that ring the dark and fade. Beyond them the colors stretched by the universe's slow inhale. And beyond even that, faint drumbeats in the arrangement of galaxies, regular spacings like ripples left from a primordial strike. You do not need to see the whole tower to trust it. You need only the overlaps. Stare to stare, be gentle with words like true and exact. Every rung carries weather, noise rides with signal. The air shivers, the ground hums, the electronics flicker. You do not scold the world for being alive. You embrace averages, you welcome long nights, you let statistics cradle the sparks. Patience. turns scatter into clarity the way a long exposure turns a dark frame into a picture. You are not imposing order. You are allowing it to reveal itself. There are nights when the floor feels missing, when the object is too faint for pulses, too distant for winks, too quiet for grain. You stack your strands anyway, braiding brightness with color, curve with echo, rotation with residue. You let the methods vote. The answer is not a single shout. It is a choir leaning toward a note. That lean becomes your measurement, with room left around it like soft padding. You label the padding clearly. Honesty is also a rung dot, once in a while. The night rewards you with an exquisite coincidence. A distant lamp whose light is split and delayed by a foreground mass, making multiple images that brighten at different times. Those delays are footsteps measured in days and weeks, and from them you can step out a scale of the cosmos itself. Elsewhere, tightly wound beacons near deep wells of gravity trace orbits you can clock, offering a geometric rung clean of dust. An assumption: you do not lean on any single gift forever, but you welcome each as another strand in the braid. Climbing does not mean leaving home. It means widening the circle of what you can relate to. You start with a thumb's width and end with a bridge of methods spanning billions of light years, all supported by overlaps you could draw on a page. The unity of it comforts you. A human trick with two eyes grows into a cosmic framework. Nothing magical happens in between, only careful listening and respectful handoffs. Even your uncertainty becomes disciplined, a garden hedge rather than a thicket, and so you reach a new calm. Distance is not a guess. It is a conversation among small shifts. Each rung is a courtesy extended to the next. Here is what I know nearby, says the first. Here is how I carry it farther, says the second. Here is my bright farewell to reach beyond both of you, says the third. The farthest rungs answer, we are colored by the universe's breathing, but we remember your lessons. The ladder does not end. It fades into the horizon, and tomorrow the horizon will move. You close the notebook, but keep the feeling. Your understanding stands taller than your body now, yet it bends, not breaks, in the wind of doubt. You can climb in darkness because you have learned how small, reliable differences make steps. You can rest on a landing because you trust the way knowledge is handed upward, scaffolded by overlap and softened by humility. You know which rung to trust when the night offers no floor. The next, one that touches to others. What remains is simply to keep building. New instruments will steady your hand. New wavelengths will add quieter, cooler rungs. New cross-checks will bind the braid tighter. You will revise numbers, shift scales by a sliver, untie and retie knots. This is not failure. This is craft. The sky is large, but your ladder grows with your patience, and patience is the one resource that does not thin with distance. You breathe, and the ladder breathes with you upward, outward, backward in time. Small shifts carry you farther than bravado ever could. You let them. You place your weight gently, test the overlap, and rise, step by careful step, through a darkness that is not empty but detailed, textured, and kind. You carry that kindness forward with every careful step you take tonight, and tomorrow too. You let your thoughts widen the way breath widens your ribs. The sky cooperates. As you look farther, you sense something subtle loosening between the lights. The lines you once imagined as fixed are not rails after all. They are threads in a fabric that keeps relaxing. The glow that reaches you leans toward longer shades, as if each color has been gently tugged, like yarn eased by patient hands. Distance is not merely a span. It is a stretch, a motion of the room itself. When sound comes from a passing train, the pitch slides as it approaches and slides again as it leaves. Light can make a similar confession, though it does not need air to carry it. If the space between you and a distant galaxy lengthens while the message travels, then the message lengthens too. Each wave crests a little farther apart than when it began, and the color leans redder not because the lamp cooled, but because the path grew under its feet. You read this tilt the way a hiker reads wind on tall grass. A uniform lean speaks of a steady breeze. A random tangle speaks of confusion. Across the deep sky, the lean is organized. The farther the source, the more the hue drifts toward the long end of the rainbow. It is as if the universe exhales, and the breath carries every note outward, a soft expansion that leaves fingerprints on color and timing. Nearby spaces play mostly by local rules. The moon circles, the planets keep their slow braids. Your home and hands do not lengthen with the evening. Bonds hold small neighborhoods together. The stretching prefers the wide plains between clusters of galaxies. You can sit in your chair and watch the wallpaper recede without feeling the chair change its size. Small things keep their promises, so big things can tell the larger story. You might wonder whether the galaxies are flying through the dark, or whether the dark itself is growing between them. The difference sounds philosophical, but its traces are practical. When objects move through a medium, you expect tides of directions, some coming, some going. What you see instead is a broad pattern. Almost everywhere you look on the largest scales, remoteness comes with redness. That is the sign not of a swarm of bullets, but of taffy pulled evenly in every direction at once. The sky is generous with more than one reason for redness. A cool ember glows red because of its own gentle heat. A hot beacon looks blue-white because it throws its energy into tighter, quicker waves. The stretch you study is another red intalia, red laid on top of the original, as if the page of light had been scaled up while the ink kept its pattern. To tell them apart, you look for tiny familiar marks in the message, thin bars and notches every element stamps on light. When those marks are shifted together toward the long end, you know the color changed, not from heat alone, but from the journey itself. This shift is not only poetry, it is measure. You can, if you wish, mark how much the pattern has moved and translate that move into how fast space has been growing between you and the source while the light journeyed. Stack many such measures, and a picture emerges. The farther the lighthouse, the stronger the leaning. Distance and tilt talk to each other, carrying news about the rhythm of growth. Growth, however, need not be steady. A long sigh may begin slow, quicken, and relax again. The deep past seems hotter and denser, a time when everything sat closer to everything else. With time, the space is opened. You cannot stand outside the room to watch. You can only compare notes from different corners. Light from a nearby galaxy tells a recent verse. Light from a remote one tells an older stanza. Together they sing the changing tempo. An ordinary picture helps. Think of raisins in rising donuts because galaxies are food, but because the image teaches scale. Each raisin keeps its shape, the little structures bound by their stickiness, yet the dough between them swells. Given enough time, every raisin sees every other raisin recede, not by fleeing, but by the table growing. Your neighborhood star swirl is one raisin, safe in its bonds. The great gulfs between swirls are the dough. Your eyes read the swelling by how much the raisin to raisin spacing grows with time. If you trace the lean across many distances, you find a simple line to begin with, a rule of thumb that says, add more stretch for more far. Later, the line bends slightly, reminding you that the universe is a patient dancer, not a metronome. The bend contains information the way rings in wood contain weather. Inside that curve are stories of matter tugging inward and of a smoother pressure pushing outward, both ridden into the slope of color versus remoteness. Even the scatter around that line has meaning. Some points sit a touch above, some a touch below, and the spread whispers about motions layered on the stretch local sways. Cluster infall, the small eddies that ride within the general flow. You do not need the names to feel the sense. The cosmos keeps the beat, while near companions add quiet grace notes around the rhythm. You breathe and listen. Even your sense of time hums along with this stretching. You are not only seeing farther, you are seeing earlier, and the tilt increases. Alongside that earthiness, distant light does not merely start red. It becomes redder as the room lengthens during its transit. The message is edited by the journey, and the edit itself is part of the message. The faint background that bathes everything the oldest light, still arriving, also bears the signature of stretch. It began hot, but the universe is long cooling, and widening has relaxed its color into microwaves. A hush of warmth that fills all directions with even patience. What once was glare is now glow, proof that stretching is not a local trick, but a property of the whole room. You might ask, if the room grows, why do you not grow with it? Why does your book not expand in your hands? Why does your breath not widen between your ribs on its own? Here, the bonds that hold matter together are stronger than the soft pull of widening. The weaving that makes a rock, a planet, a star, even a galaxy, holds the threads close. Stretching wins only in the spaces where there is no strong weave, to resist the wide prairies between the clustered towns of matter. See how this understanding simplifies. The sky, you no longer picture each galaxy choosing a private escape. When the cloth stretches, every patch recedes from every other patch. From any galaxy's point of view, the rest drift away in the same pattern. A few neighbors buck the trend and approach, tugged by local gravity, but those are small, friendly conversations. The broad chorus remains the same remoteness, pairs with redness, not because lamps flee, but because the room is slowly expanding. Return to the idea of light as a letter. In this chapter of letters, the handwriting stretches as it travels. The spacing between words increases, yet the words stay in order, so you can still read. The letter tells two truths at once: what the lamp was like when it wrote, and how the room changed while the page crossed it. This need not feel abstract. In your own life, a siren's pitch drops as it passes. A wave reaches longer on a receding tide than on an advancing one. A rubber band hums a lower note as you pull it. Your ears and hands already know the language of stretch. The sky invites you to apply that knowing at a grander scale and with deeper patience, because color can change for many reasons. You check gently. You compare with trusted beacons, weigh light that gravity has magnified, and ask several methods to agree. Each cross-check helps you read the room, not the smudge on the window. The more you trust the reading, the more you let it reshape your sense of belonging. You are not set at the center of an explosion. You are a note in an expanding chord. No edge rushes past you. No middle privileges your perspective. The chord simply widens, and you ride within it, listening. The view is humbling, and the humility feels like rest. And the future. If the room keeps widening, very distant voices will lean beyond your instrument's hearing. The night will seem emptier, though it is not. Impermanence is part of seeing. Nothing you learn about stretch erases the local, intimate sky. The moon still rounds its month. Planets still knit simple patterns out of complicated steps. The Great Bear still takes its stroll around the pole. You keep both scales at once, the homey constancy of nearby rhythms and the grand, slow exhale between distant cities of stars. In the end, reading the red lean is an act of trust. That light keeps its order as spacing changes, that patience reveals patterns, and that the universe is legible to small creatures. Trust becomes method, and method becomes rest. Breathe in and out and consider the other things that can tilt a color. Dust can warm the tone by scattering the bluer notes. Thin gas can nibble at particular shades. Air can wobble the paths and make a steady source seem to shimmer. The world between you and the lamp is not featureless, and every feature leaves its signature. To hear the stretch clearly, you will need to learn the texture of the curtain it passes through. For now, carry the core image. The room grows as you look, and the growth leans light toward length. Distance is a verb here, not just a number. Your gaze, properly patient, becomes a ruler laid across, expansions quiet, and the ruler is color itself. The sky stretches as you look, and in that stretching you read the universe taking another slow breath. You begin with a soft admission. The night is not a clean pane. Between your gaze and the stars hangs a fine breath of dust and gas, a veil. Thin that you mistake it for emptiness until you learn to look. It does not lie, it edits. It is the difference between a whisper and the same words spoken through cloth. You accept that astronomy is the art of laundering light without washing away its meaning. Dust is not the enemy of clarity, it is the record of lives. Grains condense in the cooling outflows of elder stars and in the debris of loud departures. They gather carbon and silicates and ices, pebbles of shadow drifting in interstellar wind. Around newborn suns those specks become the flower of planets. In the wider dark they wander, thin as perfume, and yet, over long paths, strong enough to soften whatever passes through. Your eyes meet housekeeping, color goes first. Small grains ask more of the short waves, and let the slow ones through. Blue is scattered aside. Red and orange slide farther, so a distant lamp appears warmer than it truly is. You already know this from sunsets in your air, where the path through atmosphere grows long and the sky pens the day's final note in copper and rose. Space writes the same sentence in a paler hand. You learn to suspect redness that rides with distance. The dimming is honest, but it can mislead. A star hidden behind a thicker swath seems fainter and redder than its neighbor, though the two may burn with the same heat. If you trust only what reaches you, you might label one elder, one cooler, one farther. Dust asks you to pause, to consider. The hallway the light walked. It is like judging a voice without noticing the door it speaks through. You begin to clean the door, gently. Cleaning happens in several kindnesses. First you spread a star's glow into a delicate rainbow and notice which colors arrive underfed. A steady bend toward red hints at smudging. Then you consult maps made of the sky's own size traces of faint warmth from the dust itself, and you sketch how much soft cloth lies along each sightline. Finally, you look for pairs. A bare field beside a dusty one, two similar stars, one sidestepping the veil. Comparison becomes care. The veil is not uniform. It thickens into clouds, cold enough to hide their breath, collapses into knots where gravity pinches, and thins into nearly nothing between the knots. Where the veil is densest, light fails altogether in visible tones. Yet those same cold pockets glow beyond red, where warmth sneaks through. Newborn stars keep their first fires private, nursing inside cocoons that only longer waves can pierce. You learn to switch instruments the way you switch moods, softer to see farther. Sometimes dust does more than dim. It paints. Its surfaces reflect nearby starlight into a soft blue aura, like chalky air around a bright lamp. Elsewhere, gas mingled with dust absorbs fierce light and re-emits it as tidy reds and greens. The calm signatures of atoms settling. Down, the night becomes a gallery. Reflection veils, emission veils, dark lanes cutting bright fields. What you thought was negative space is revealed as deliberate brushwork. Even close to home, the effect is intimate. A triangular glow along the ecliptic at certain seasons is sunlight bouncing from a thin disk of interplanetary dust, the domestic cousin of the wider veil. On the darkest nights, the whole sky carries a small, even glow, the atmosphere's own quiet chemistry. You learn to subtract these gentle hums, not because they are faults, but because you are trying to measure something behind them. Every subtraction is preceded by a thank you. Gas, too, plays its part. Though mostly clear, it leaves pencil marks in the rainbow, slim lines where particular atoms sip particular colors. Dust broadens and blurs those marks, while motion slides them a touch. By reading the marks and their softening, you feel not only the dust ahead, but the gas mixed with it, the temperature of the mix, and even how fast it drifts. The medium between you and the stars stops being a nuisance and becomes a subject. A weather to forecast. In some directions, the veil is a curtain, in others, a wall. Along the plane of your galaxy, starlight crosses crowded lanes of dust and gas that braid like rivers. The Milky Way's mottled glow cloudy, fissured, alive comes from that layered geography. If you chase a sightline out of the plane, the path clears, and distant galaxies emerge as quiet coins. You realize that what you can see depends less on your desire than on the road light must travel to reach you. Distance, temperature, and youth all pretend to be color if you let dust act as translator. A baby star reddened by its cocoon might imitate an elder. A hot blue star behind a thick groove might masquerade as a cooler one beside it. So you build habits. You ask neighboring stars to vouch for each other. You compare colors with standards, whose properties are trusted. You listen to the way brightness drops across the spectrum, not just at one hue. The pretense dissolves. There is a sweetness in correction. You are not stripping away romance. You are returning it to the right address. A cleaned spectrum gives you a star's true temperature. A cleaned brightness lets you judge an honest distance. A cleaned color reveals whether a star is young and dust-wrapped or old and ash-soft. The process is not a scolding, but a mercy, like wiping rain from a window so you can admire the garden that made the rain. Sometimes the veil performs a magic that helps you. Dust grains align in large-scale magnetic fields and polarize the light they scatter. The glow that reaches you carries a subtle twist, a preferred direction in its wave. By measuring that whisper of order, you map the invisible threads threading the galaxy. The same grains that hid one truth reveal another. The medium confesses its structure in the midst of its obscuring. The largest curtain is ancient and famous. The first light that filled the universe when it became transparent enough for photons to travel freely. That glow bathes everything. Even now, cooled and stretched beyond red by expansion, a faint sea to special ears. Dust in your own galaxy writes on that sea, too, adding small notes that must be removed to hear the oldest message cleanly. Cosmology begins and continues with patient dusting. You carry the veil lesson into daily living. You remember how often your first impressions are reddened by distance, dimmed by intervening weather, colored by your own air. You learn to ask what lies between. The practice is not suspicious, it is kind. You become better at seeing people and problems in there. True light by cleaning your lens without scratching it. Astronomy loans you a method that turns into a habit of mercy. There is also a joy in what dust allows. Without it, planets would lack their seeds. Clouds would lack their cores. Young stars would suffer raw exposure. The same specks that occlude also assemble. They cool gas by offering surfaces where energy can be shed. They hide embryos long enough for them to grow. You stop treating the veil as a thief and start greeting it as a midwife with a messy apron. And wise hands, instruments, extend your touch. Eyes that feel beyond red find nurseries glowing. Ears tuned to radio hear cold hydrogen tracing spiral arms through darkness. Cameras that count blue and red separately reveal how much color was lost en route. With each extension, you promise restraint, to correct only as far as needed, to leave the natural tint where it belongs, to honor the path as much as the destination. The sky deserves both truth and tenderness. At last you step outside with a simple trust. The night looks patched and stained, and you are glad, because the stains are the story. You can look into a dark lane and know it is not absence but presence, a library of grains and gas between you and a book of stars. You can look at a redder cluster and imagine the thin smoke that tinted it. You can hold a calibrated chart and a quiet breath at the same time. What else do you miss because the world between you and it is not invisible? You think of the ocean seen through mist, of a voice heard through a wall, of memory remembered through longing. Correction begins in admitting there is a medium. Clarity continues in learning how that medium behaves. Wisdom arrives when you love the medium too, because it belongs to the same world as what you wish to see. Dust, in the end, paints the night because it belongs to the night. It takes light in, turns it, gives it back altered, not ruined. It is a partner in appearance, a co-author of the sky. You will go on cleaning your windows, yes, but you will also press your palm to the glass and feel the coolness that tells you a world is there, touching you back through thin, patient miles. You begin with a thought that is quiet enough to carry you towards sleep. Light does not decide its route. Space decides, and light consents. Mass is not a hand tugging a beam. It is a bowl pressed into the fabric of the world. A ray that passes near the bowl follows the slope, not because it is weak, but because straightness is whatever the room says it is. Once you accept that, bending feels like honesty. Gravity becomes the grammar of travel, and light speaks it. Fluently. From that grammar a mirror appears, with no silver and no frame. A galaxy in the foreground heavy with stars and with the dim halo that holds them works as a lens simply by existing. A source tucked farther away sends out its patient messengers, and several streams skim the galaxy's bowl. They reach. You buy different corridors and make multiple portraits. Twin smudges, arcing crescents, sometimes a nearly perfect ring. Each portrait is the same voice heard through a different hallway. A river gives you language for this. Water flows around a stone, not because the water hesitates, but because the stone decides what straight downstream means nearby. In the sky, mass is the stone and light is the current. When the alignment is neat, symmetry appears, paired. Arcs that rhyme, or a circle that clasps the lensing galaxy like a halo. When the alignment is shy, you get a lopsided family of images, still recognizably kin. None are imposters. Each is a sincere photograph taken from a different angle of the same path. Magnification feels like kindness. The lens brightens and enlarges the background object without creating a single new photon, the way a curved piece of glass concentrates sunlight. Details that would have slept stay awake long enough for you to notice them. Star-forming knots, narrow filaments, faint winds, curling from a galaxy's heart. The image grows broader as it grows brighter, because the lens spreads area while it gathers light. The total is fair, the book's balanced. Nothing is counterfeited. Everything is redistributed. Curvature keeps time as well as shape. A sudden flare behind a lens can reach you along two or more routes. One route dips closer to the bowl and lingers where time runs a shade slower. Another swings wide through relaxed terrain. They arrive separated by days or weeks, sometimes months. The pause is not a trick. It is the measure of travel and the measure of time's pace along the way. When you time those echoes and compare them with the shapes you see, you gain a ruler for the stage itself, a soft clock for size dot. At certain angles, the geometry draws a ring, almost perfect, calm, and astonishing the first time you notice it. Elsewhere, the ring breaks into arcs or pairs of points, commas bracketing the lensing galaxy's quiet sentence. You learn these families by looking, by tracing lines backward in your mind until the fragments gather into the single source they came from. Recognition grows into craft. Craft becomes trust. You begin to sense, before the calculations are done, when a pattern is an echo and not a coincidence. The lens also testifies about itself. The stronger the bend, the heavier the hand behind it. Much of that hand's weight does not shine. It sits as a dim halo that refuses to glow and yet reveals its presence by how it orders light to travel. You weigh the unlit by its talent for distortion. You draw maps of invisible mass-smooth bulges, gentle saddles, small knots by the wrinkles, carved into images of background things. Curves become confessions. The confessions combine into charts of halos greater than the stars they cradle. Sometimes the mirror grows to the size of a city. An entire cluster of galaxies, pooling its matter, lays a wide field of curvature across the sky. Then the background is not just doubled, it is braided and pulled into long, repeating slivers. You step back and let patterns at the scale of many shapes speak together. By reading the chorus, you learn where mass crowds thickly, where it thins, and where pockets hide that never glow. In another direction, the effect is gentle. The foreground gives the whole background a slight lean, and you map that lean by averaging thousands of faint overlays. At the smallest scale, you listen for brief brightenings, a star in a nearer galaxy, or a planet traveling with that star passes in front of a distant spark. For a handful of nights, the light swells into a smooth hill and then subsides. You cannot split the image into components. You only register the extra brightness. Still, the curve of that rise and fall carries information about mass, about speed, sometimes about a companion. Worlds have been found this way, not by seeing their disks, but by the temporary focus they lend to someone else's light. Clarity lives beside complication. Dust in the lens can redden one image more than another. Stars within the lens can freckle a smooth arc with tiny steps of brightness. Motion slowly shifts alignments from year to year. Instruments carry their own habits, and even space telescopes must learn their preferences. You answer with patience and with overlap. Where one method and another both work, you make them meet. When they agree, confidence grows. When they disagree, you treat the gap not as failure, but as a hint that something unmodeled is quietly at work. The modeling itself is a quiet craft. You hold a warped pattern in your mind and ask which arrangement of mass could produce such echoes. You sketch a bowl, send trial rays through it, and see whether the family of images lands where your detectors say it should. If not, you adjust smoother here, lumpier there until the reconstruction of the background aligns with what you actually observe. You are not bullying the sky into agreement. You are letting a true shape emerge from honest constraints, and the moment it does, you feel a small, restful click. Through these mirrors, you reach farther back without straining. A magnified young galaxy becomes readable. You can watch where stars ignite, how outflows carve the edges of clouds, how tiny beads align along a filament like dew. Colors help, too. Expansion stretches waves so that distant light arrives redder than when it left. Deep gravity adds delay along the near route. Shape, brightness, and color together let you estimate not only what the lens is, but when the source sent its letter and how much the journey altered it. Philosophy arrives quietly, at the edge of method. Which image is the real one? Each is real along the route it took. The source threw light in all directions. The lens guided several portions of that light toward you by different lanes. If pressed to choose, you choose the family and the map of the lanes together. Truth, here, is multiple and consistent. Several honest views of the same event, each with its own delay. You learn to love that generosity, because it says reality is not a single snapshot, but a set of routes held in common. Gravity becomes a cartographer as you practice. By bending light, it draws lines around itself and sketches the larger scaffold everything hangs from. A cluster's core is circled by giant arcs. A single galaxy's center is flanked by double points. A wide, faint sheet of mass leaves a meadow of slanted ovals that all lean the same way. From these gestures, you recover a picture of the hidden layout, where clumps merged, where streams fed them, where voids widened like clearings. It is weather for the unlit, pressure centers, valleys, fronts, and isobars made of matter. You follow these lines the way a geographer follows watersheds on a map, and you sense the slow history encoded there. Structure did not appear ready-made. It grew by invitation. Gravity asking matter to gather, then gather again, until the present sky became a woven field of knots and threads. You end with gratitude and a tidy ledger. Magnification is a gift, but you keep the accounts. Brighter means larger, so you correct your counts of distant things and refuse to confuse the amplified few with the many. You add these lessons to other ladders, you climb more shifts that fix the nearby pulses that calibrate the middle. Colors that whisper of expansion and the mirrors made by gravity tie them together. Time delays become clocks, arcs become scales, slight leans become maps. Nothing here shouts. Everything agrees by overlap, the way quiet waves agree on a shore. You trust that chorus, and it carries you onward. At the edge of sleep, the first idea returns, now threaded with detail. Light does not choose. The room does. The room learns its contour from mass and energy. Those contours spread paths into families, and families of paths make families of images. The images arrive with pauses that tell you about scale. The shapes tell you about weight. The faint coordinated leans tell you about what refuses to shine. None of this requires force. It requires attention, comparison, and patience enough to hear an echo as information rather than repetition. You close your eyes and still see rings and arcs resting where stars would be, like dew around a spider's thread. You let the understanding sit without effort. Gravity makes mirrors, and mirrors make knowledge. In the morning, another alignment will rise, and you will listen again, not to conquer anything, but to be included in the conversation between light and the shape that guides it. You let your breathing slow until the world feels like a bowl holding warm water around your edges. In that stillness, you notice a second warmth, softer and older than the sun on your skin. It does not flare or flicker. It is a background, a quiet that glows. The oldest light is not a shout. It is the hush after a first cry, still crossing the room and gently filling everything you can name. You keep listening without effort, quietly. Long before there were stars, the young universe was a hot fog where light and matter clung to one another. Photons could not travel far without being caught again, like bees in a bright greenhouse. As space expanded and cooled, the fog thinned, atoms formed, and light slipped free. What escaped then has never stopped moving. It washes through you now, faithful and steady, a lullaby from when everything was young. This afterglow is not bright to your eyes. Its color has been stretched by the growth of space into microwaves, waves longer than red, beyond what your retina can sense, yet the warmth is real, only a few degrees above the deepest cold nature allows. It is the leftover heat of a once blazing beginning, cooled by time's long breath, but not extinguished. If you could see it directly, the whole sky would look smooth, a nearly even bath of faint light salted with tiny freckles. Those freckles matter. They are the soft punctuation in the oldest sentence we can read. Subtle variations in temperature and density printed across the glow. The spots are not decoration, they are potential. They show where the infant cosmos was a whisper more crowded here and a whisper less crowded there. Over ages, gravity leaned into those small differences, gathering matter into the slightly heavy places and letting emptier regions widen. Galaxies, clusters, and the great planes between them rose from those gentle beginnings. You do not need equations to feel the meaning. Hold a picture instead, a warm fog turning clear, a light freed too. Travel, a smooth field with a faint grain that became structure. When you hear that the oldest light is uniform to better than 1 part in 100,000, translate it into feeling. A lake polished to glass with ripples so slight you would miss them unless you waited a very long time. The sky waited, and we learned to read the ripples. Sitting still, however, is not enough. The afterglow hides beneath nearer things air that glows, dust that shines, radio chatter. To hear the whisper, you learn the orchestra of noise. Snow on old television screens carried a trace of this background. Today, instruments ride balloons, climb mountains, and listen from orbit to dodge Earth's bustle. Listening becomes craft. Remove what is nearby. Keep what is everywhere. The hush carries a spectrum to a signature curve, showing how its warmth is shared among wavelengths. It matches a near-perfect thermal glow, the kind made by anything in simple balance with its own heat. The match says the early cosmos was hot and dense and cooled evenly, like a kettle lifted from the stove to a wide windowsill. It is a promise, kept across billions of years, because the glow comes from all directions. You might wonder whether it has a center. Your body rides with Earth and Sun and galaxy, and that motion tilts the background a little, making one side slightly warmer. Subtracting that drift is like straightening a picture. What remains is not about you, but about the universe itself, written almost the same in every direction. The tiny freckles tell a finer story. Their sizes and strengths form a pattern, a kind of chord made from peaks and valleys. That chord encodes how sound once moved through the young plasma, pressure waves ringing through the hot fog before light slipped free. Gravity tried to compress, radiation pushed back, and together they made oscillations, little heartbeats rising and falling in place. When the fog cleared, the beats froze into the afterglow speckles, a snapshot of rhythm turned into a map. Are small, yet the picture returns your smallness as belonging. The fact that you can measure a pattern imprinted when no stars had yet formed means you are not just drifting through an indifferent dark. You are a listener, placed at the right distance and timed to hear the world's infant murmur. You are a witness to a beginning doing what beginnings do, stretching, cooling, becoming more intricate without forgetting its first warmth. The map makes you less alone. Think about the age implied by an ongoing arrival. Light from a nearby star brings you older news than sunlight. This afterglow brings you the oldest news still. Every second, more of that ancient message reaches you. Not because the event continues, but because the front edge of the message is still filling the room. The past is not only behind, it is also around you, slowly catching up to every corner, with patient steps. You may ask why this oldest light is so smooth. If it is the seedbed of everything, why is it not already tangled? The answer lies in timing. The fog cleared when the cosmos had cooled enough for charged particles to settle into neutral partners. After that settling, light could travel freely, but gravity had not yet had time to roughen the field much. The snapshot was taken just as clarity began, before clumps had grown large. It is a portrait of calm drawn a moment after crying stopped, and before the first heavy structures grew. Even the temperature today tells a story of distance and time. The afterglow's warmth is now barely above absolute zero, not because the source dimmed, but because the room expanded. Stretch the light's waves and you cool their color. Spread the same energy through a larger space and you lower its temperature. You are held in a universe that cools by making more room for its own heat to relax into. The portrait is not perfectly still in your instruments. Tiny fluctuations in the map trace back to quantum shivers, amplified by cosmic growth. Microscopic uncertainties written large upon the sky. Translate that into feeling. At the earliest times, nature could not decide on exactness, and those hesitations became the seed of structure. From almost the same came just different enough, and from that, stars. It is astonishing that a map so old can speak so freshly. With it, you measure the overall rate at which space is expanding today and compare it with the rate suggested by other rulers. You weigh slight mismatches and ask whether you have misread a foreground or whether the universe is inviting you to refine its story. The map does not mind. It has waited this long. It can wait while you think and improve your listening. You also notice that the afterglow is not the only whisper from that era. Another kind of messenger left even earlier and interacts even less, passing through matter as if it were mist. Those visitors stream through you by the trillions each second, mostly unnoticed, carrying their own version of the infant news. Listening to them would give a second portrait to compare with the first. For now you keep your ear with the glow you can hear. You imagine covering the sky with a lattice of points and measuring the tiny, warm and cool departures at each one. You stitch those numbers into a tapestry that runs everywhere. The result looks like quiet camouflage. No sharp edges, just the natural mottling of a world allowed to settle. You sit with it as you sit with your own breathing. From that patience grows gratitude. The background that once puzzled early radio astronomers now reads like a letter addressed to whoever would wait. Its postage is the same in every direction. Its ink has faded in proportion to the room's expansion. Its freckles carry the grammar. Of the first vibrations, nothing else we can see offers such a wide and even horizon of understanding. It is the nearest thing to a common sky for every possible observer. You do not need to memorize details to feel the comfort. The message is simple at heart. There was a hot beginning. The room widened. Light left a memory. The memory is still arriving. Your part is to listen with instruments and kindness, to respect the whispering nature of endurance, and to notice how a nearly uniform glow can nurture a wildly varied cosmos without losing its calm. When you finally close your eyes, the afterglow is still there, as constant as your own pulse. You cannot will it brighter, but you can make your room darker, your measurements truer, your patience longer. You can let the oldest light be what it is, a cradle memory unrolling its soft film across everything, including you, including this breath. And as you rest with that warmth, a new curiosity rises, quiet and persistent, about the other travelers, who slip through walls and through you, almost without a trace, carrying news from places even light cannot escape. You begin with a quiet understanding. Some truths pass through you without asking permission. Neutrinos do this the way wind slips through a net present, persistent, almost impossible to hold. You open your palm, and 1 billion of them cross your skin every second, not slowed by bone or book or mountain. They are pieces of events, far away, messengers trained to ignore obstacles. And tonight you learn how to listen to what almost doesn't touch you at all. They come from many kitchens. In the heart of the sun, where simple atoms are pressed into warmer stories, neutrinos are minted as a receipt for change. When a proton begins its long chain toward helium, a neutrino lifts away like a breath you don't notice, carrying a little energy and a precise record of the act. These solar ghosts depart immediately, hours before any photon can crowd its way outward. So the sun you measure in neutrinos is a sun of right now. Even stars keep more than one clock. Elsewhere, the ovens are louder. When a heavy star's core collapses, matter falls inward so quickly that light stalls. But neutrinos surge out from the crush in a flood, carrying news from layers where pressure breaks ordinary rules. In a nearby galaxy, a collapse decades ago sent a handful of neutrinos to Earth before the visible flare, a knock on the door before the house lit up. You finally understand why observatories watch dark water and polar ice as well as sky. The proof may arrive as a whisper. Neutrinos pass through matter because they almost never pause to trade with it. They ignore electric pulls and pushes and rely instead on a shy interaction that rarely becomes a handshake. If a city was solid matter, a neutrino would cross it like a lone commuter who never stops at corners, never meets a glance, and somehow catches every green light. Give that commuter 1,000 Milky Ways in a row, and the odds of a brief hello finally become reasonable. Nearly nothing is not the same as nothing, because they pass through so freely, you need unlikely tools to notice them. Imagine a cavern holding a lake in the dark, so clean that a single flash can cross it like a gasp. Arrange a ring of eyes around the water, eyes that can see the bluest glint when a neutrino finally nudges a particle and makes a tiny cone of light. Or bore sensors deep into Antarctic ice, turning a continent translucent and listening for pinpricks. When the pinprick arrives, it is proof that a messenger touched the world and left. They change while traveling. Neutrinos come in three kinds, a family of flavors that rhyme with the particles they accompany at birth. Somewhere between source and sink, they swap masks. A solar kind can arrive as a different kind, a mid-flight costume change that only happens if the actors possess a small but real weight. This switching, first seen as a deficit and later measured as a rhythm, is quiet evidence that the neutrino has mass but not nothing. Even almost nothing carries consequence. Mass matters for the story of everything. If these shy particles carry a little weight, the balance of the early universe tilts differently than once imagined. The shapes of galaxies, the rate of clumping, the way the first light cooled all keep a subtle memory of how many neutrinos moved and how heavy they were. You cannot count those ancient ones easily. They are colder than the glow between galaxies, drifting as a background so faint that today's hands cannot feel it. Still, the equations remember them. You keep tracing paths. Some neutrinos start in reactors on Earth, routine splits, producing routine whispers that become careful calibrations. Others rise from the atmosphere when cosmic rays strike air and turn into cascades. A few carry astonishing energies, so high that their rare flickers in deep ice point back across intergalactic distances. Those are messages from catastrophes. Black holes feeding, jets colliding, cores igniting. The sky you imagined as quiet becomes, in neutrinos, a map of vengeance. Because neutrinos escape thick places, they let you probe where light fails. The center of the sun, the moments of a stellar collapse, the inside of a nuclear firewall become reachable by a messenger that floats through walls. With enough patience, the world becomes slightly translucent. You stop thinking of matter as a stop sign and start thinking of it as something with a few unguarded doors if you bring the right question. The right question, here, is a detector built to trust faintness and wait. Sometimes, the neutrino's proof is partnered with light. A galaxy brightens, instruments across the world turn, and over hours to days, the different messengers arrive. First neutrinos, then high-energy light, then calmer colors. Together, they write a sentence about what happened and when, a fuller account than anyone could provide. You learn to love the ensemble, photons for surfaces, neutrinos for interiors, charged particles for shock fronts, and later, ripples in space telling you how mass moved. You move from what neutrinos are to what they mean. They remind you that much of reality avoids your senses by nature, not by distance. They teach you to trust instruments the way you trust your other organs, extensions of feeling rather than replacements. The room you live in grows bigger because you can now notice a trickle that runs through it night and day. You feel smaller and more included at once, like a listener welcomed into a conversation already underway. There is room, too, for questions not yet answered. How heavy, exactly, are the three kinds? Which one is heaviest? Which lightest? Do neutrinos and their mirror opposites behave with perfect symmetry, or is there a small tilt favoring matter that helped your world exist? You hold these questions without hurrying them, the way you hold sleep as it approaches. You do not grasp, you allow. The unknown is not a gap. It is a field, to rest beside, open to morning. At a human scale, you find meaning in the method. The detectors are cathedrals to patience, huge volumes built to witness tiny flashes. They are beautiful in their refusal to turn away from the barely there. Their builders learned to subtract backgrounds the way you subtract distractions when you want to hear your own thoughts. In this way, the discipline of neutrinos is spiritual without leaving evidence. It is attention that becomes knowledge, devotion to the almost invisible. You also remember humility. When the first solar measurements didn't match expectations, it was tempting to doubt the sun, but the mismatch led to a deeper truth. The neutrinos were changing kinds mid-journey, and the sun was precisely as hot as suspected. Skepticism pointed inward and improved the theory instead of scolding the star. There is tenderness in watching a field learn from a bruise rather than hide it. You carry that tenderness into your own corrections and your next attempts. Neutrinos even join the map of Earth. They arrive day and night, but at night some have come the long way through the planet from below. Counting how many arrive from low angles lets you test how transparent different depths are to these shy travelers. One day, maps made purely of neutrinos could reveal the hot rock beneath continents, a medical scan of the planet that uses the universe's own flashlight. It is practical and poetic, seeing interiors by listening to what passes through them unchanged. Your palm remains open in thought. Through it pass particles from the sun's core 8 minutes ago, from a supernova that burst before you were born, from a reactor humming in a country you will never visit, from a collision at the heart of a far quasar. They share a property that delights you, indifference to barriers. Yet because they rarely touch, any single event is uncertain. Only by waiting long and listening wide do you turn the rain into weather and weather into a season. The contrast with light sharpens your appreciation. Photons illuminate surfaces and scatter from dust. They can be trapped, delayed, or colored by the medium. Neutrinos ignore such edits. Between the two, you gain depth. Light sketches the face. Neutrinos hint at the bones. Add other messengers, and the portrait deepens again. You start to think of astronomy not as seeing, but as sensing, hearing, feeling, tasting, many organs for the same vast meal, coordinated on your behalf. In the quiet of this hour, you practice believing in what moves through you unseen. You do not have to feel the particles to accept that they are there, just as you do not need to hear your heart to know it beats. Knowledge is not always accompanied by sensation. Sometimes it is accompanied by the readiness to be changed by what you cannot touch. That readiness becomes the blanket you pull up, the permission to rest in a room wider than your senses. Before sleep, you circle back to the smallest fact, billions per second, always, from everywhere. The numbers are comforting, not overwhelming, because each one is a promise that the universe is in conversation with you, whether you answer or not. Your part, if you want one, is simple and hard. Build quiet, hold steady, and let the softest knocks be enough to wake your attention. Listening becomes a craft, and then a kindness, and then a way of being in the world. You wonder, finally, what other truths cross your life, the same way, undramatic, persistent, barely interactive, yet full of meaning if collected with care. Kindness is unnoticed, patterns uncounted, signals beneath noise. Neutrinos become a parable that does not scold. It keeps moving through you, with or without your notice, leaving the same invitation every second. Will you allow the faint to be real, and let reality be faint? They are ghost particles, yes, but their proof is not spooky. It is domestic. steady, like background rain. The world is more porous than it seems. The walls are thinner. The messengers are already here, mid-sentence, and you are learning how to answer in a voice as quiet as theirs. You begin by noticing that stillness is a tool. When you keep still, the world reveals a layer you could not see while moving. Telescopes practice this kind of stillness. They hold their breath the way a lake holds dawn, unwrinkled and patient, so that even the faintest reflection can find its place. In that long hush, light has time to arrive. Light does not hurry to be understood. It comes as single grains, soft taps on a drum you keep quiet. Each grain is small, but the patience to keep counting is large. A quick glance hears only the nearest. Shout. A long exposure is different. It lets the whisper add itself to the next whisper and the next, until a picture blooms from persistence. You learn that seeing can be made from waiting. A telescope is not only a magnifying glass, it is a cup. A larger cup gathers more of what already falls. The mirror is the bowl, the sensor is the bottom that catches drops, and the dome is the hand that shields the drink from wind. You point the cup at a chosen patch of night and leave it there, steady. So the few drops per second can layer into meaning. Steadiness is its own discipline. The earth turns with patient confidence, carrying you under the stars. To hold a single star on the same tiny place in your detector while the planet spins, the telescope moves in a slow countenance. It does not chase the star. It simply keeps the star from sliding away. Guiding is a form of tenderness, a promise, not to fidget while the message is still speaking. The air between you and the sky is kind but restless. Warm pockets rise, cool pockets fall, and the path of light wobbles a little, like a coin rolling on its edge. Short snapshots catch each, wobble differently. Longer listening lets the wobble average out, and the true shape comes forward. You are not forcing clarity, you are allowing it. Instruments also practice calm. The heart of the detector does not shout at photons, it counts them. Each arrival is a tick, a tiny mark on a quiet slate. Darkness itself leaves a faint trace, and the electronics that do the counting add their own breath. You learn to subtract that homemade hush, to clean the slate without erasing the picture. What remains is the sky's writing. The longer you wait, the more the steady writing outgrows the stray scribbles. The murmur of randomness rises slowly. The signal rises directly with time. The difference is simple to feel, even if you never name it. Give a whisper 10 minutes and you begin to hear words. Give it an hour and the words become sentences. Extend to a night and whole paragraphs appear that were never visible in a glance. Filters teach another kind of patience. You choose a narrow slice of color and listen there alone. Then slide to another slice and listen again. Each slice reveals a mood of the source. Cooler or warmer, calm or agitated, starlight or gas glow. You pour these separate cups together and the blend tells a truer story. Some telescopes rise above the blur. They ride on mountains where the air is thinner, or float in space where the air is absent. Above the weather, the stars stop twinkling and hold their shapes. Every method serves the same hope, to greet the light as it intended to be seen. There is courage in devoting hours to a patch of darkness that looks empty to the eye. Astronomers point, wait, and trust. After a while, a field of faint galaxies flowers across the frame, each a city of stars, too shy for a quick glance. The emptiness was a misunderstanding. The long breath reveals otherwise. Waiting must also. be gentle with motion. A comet walks across your view while you listen. If you fix your attention on the stars, the comet smears. If you follow the comet, the stars smear. You choose the frame that matches your question and let everything else blur into kindness. Sometimes you do not watch continuously. You take several long sips and later pour them into one deep cup. Before you mix them, you nudge each to line up with the others. The way you stack translucent pages so the letters sit precisely on top of themselves. This stacking makes the faint notes louder without asking them to sing any harder. The picture improves because you honored many small truths instead of demanding one large one. You also change how you treat the background. The sky itself glows a little, especially near the horizon or the heart of a city. You measure that glow and set it gently aside. Even the darkness has texture once you have given it enough time. A faint gradient toward the horizon, a soft sprinkle where the galaxy thickens, a tender wash where air grows thin. Patience is not passive. It is a posture. You plan where to point, when to begin, how long to stay, and which colors to collect. You prepare the mirror, the tracking, the balance, the focus. You check the calm of the air and the hush of the electronics. Every quiet decision protects the signal. Every small kindness toward the setup is a kindness toward the sky. Radio dishes listen with the same philosophy at longer waves, where light behaves like soft surf rather than glitter. They spread wide to catch more, and they also integrate, letting the slow rolling message accumulate. Every band of the spectrum has its own cup and its own patience, but the principle is constant. Hold steady, count honestly, wait kindly. Your sense of time adjusts around this work. Minutes become the breath between adjustments. Hours become the measure of a field. Nights become a chapter. Across seasons, the same object returns to the same place at the edge of darkness, and you add new paragraphs to an old page. You become a keeper of slow books. There is also a humility in knowing that some light is beyond even your longest waiting. The universe drifts, and the farthest sources lean so red that your chosen instrument cannot hear them. You answer by changing. Cups, different mirrors, different receivers, different heights above Earth. The story keeps opening as you learn to listen in new ways. Not all patience is external. You learn to keep still inside. Your expectations quiet down so that surprise has room to enter. Many discoveries are not fireworks, but gentle corrections. A smudge where none was expected. A line a little stronger than last year. A knot of light that winks on and off with a rhythm you have finally let yourself notice. The telescope holds its breath. You hold yours alongside it. In the end, the method is simple enough to cradle in one sentence. Let more time join the picture, and the picture grows truer. You practice this beyond astronomy as well. You give friendships time, and people reveal constellations you missed in the quick glance. You give grief time, and edges soften into shapes you can live with. You give yourself time, and what felt like noise becomes a theme. Long exposure is a way to love the world. One more grace remains. When you lengthen the listening, you begin to see not just shapes but signatures within the lighter series of delicate notches that repeat, a barcode drawn by atoms. Those marks are the quiet fingerprints of elements, patterns that say, here is hydrogen, here is calcium, here is iron. They live buried in the glow. Too subtle for a hurried look, but clear in the patient sum. A telescope that holds its breath can read those marks the way fingertips read raised ink. You follow those fingerprints back to their workshops. Some were pressed in starry atmospheres. Some were cast in the brief furnaces of explosive endings. Some were made in the slow shells of swollen suns. The long exposure turns the sky into a library where each page carries both an image and a recipe. You begin to recognize not only where something is, but what it is made of, and how it came to be. You do not need to be the one turning the knobs to belong to this patience. When you pause on a balcony, letting your eyes adapt, you are practicing the same craft in your own scale. When you whisper to yourself, "Stay a little longer," you are honoring the way truth gathers. Staying is its own instrument, so you return to the simple discipline: set the cup, keep it steady, let the drops arrive. Accept the tremble, correct it gently, and move on. Pour the separate sips into a single, honest glass. And in that glass, look for the lines that tell you what has been forged and flung across time to meet you here. Now, in this quiet room of night, you begin with a soft recognition. The breath moving in and out of you is older than your lungs. Each inhale gathers small, invisible pieces once tempered in distant furnaces. Each exhale releases them again, altered by your quiet chemistry. You trace yourself by elements, the way you trace a melody by notes: carbon for the tune, oxygen for the lift, calcium for the steady beat, iron for the drum that keeps time. You are not borrowing from the stars. You are returning a favor already granted, finishing a journey that began long before language. The simple beginning of matter is not a star at all, but a hot first morning when space cooled enough to let light travel freely. In those earliest minutes, the young universe made the lightest characters. Hydrogen in abundance, a touch of helium, and only whispers of anything heavier. Stars arrive later as kitchens where those first ingredients are persuaded into richer flavors. Gravity gathers gas, pressure rises, and the center glows until the plain letters willingly link into longer words that release light. Inside such bright kitchens, change is steady and patient. The cores of modest stars turn their lightest stock into new fuel while their surfaces pour out comfort over long spans. As easy fuel thins, the balance shifts, and some stars swell into wide red lanterns, their outer layers loosened by gentle winds. In that lantern phase, the ovens discover how to assemble carbon, a versatile, generous atom that likes to make lattice and loops. The star does not clutch it all. Bit by bit, it sheds soot, dark specks that drift into space like notes for a future. Score different furnaces excel at different recipes. The heftier stars, burning hotter and faster, stack their elements toward heavier hearts. In their inner rooms, oxygen becomes abundant, joined by silicon and sulfur and other sturdy notes. The work continues only so far. At a certain weight, the process can hold no more, and the room falls in on itself. The outward layers, startled by collapse, blow free as a brilliant ending. That flash is sudden art, and its ash is generous, a storm of elements thrown into the neighborhood to be gathered later by clouds. Calcium makes a quieter promise. It settles into bone and shell, lending shape to movement and rest to the heart's electrical whisper. Its story also crosses stellar rooms. The shock of an ending star forges it in abundance, and scattering tides carry it through space. Later, on a cooling planet, rain and rock collaborate to set it free into oceans, where patient life learns to lay it down as reefs and skeletons. In your skeleton, it keeps a calendar of growth and repair. You stand because a star did not keep what it made. Iron's tale is the most startling. In the deepest layers of a massive star, iron arrives as the last sturdy word. You cannot wring extra light from it by pushing the parts closer. Further squeezing costs energy instead of giving it. For the star, this is the stopping point. Gravity rushes forward, the core buckles, and the outer rooms, unwilling to go quietly, explode. The iron does not vanish. It rides the blast into clouds that will later become new suns and new stones. A portion ends up inside red cells, where it holds oxygen like a traveler's hand. Carbon, returned by aging stars in soft winds, becomes the backbone of hungry chemistry on young worlds. It links into sugars and oils, into rings fragrant with possibility. It bends without breaking, invites variety, and stores energy the way a pantry stores jars. In you, it writes almost every sentence. Skin, thought, memory, sleep. You exhale it in a different shape than you inhale it, and green things nearby are grateful, catching what you give and packaging it back into food. The exchange is older than mountains and still as fresh as morning air. Dust gathers from these gifts, and the dust does not stay dust. It clumps in cold, wide clouds where gravity is patient. Lumps become knots, knots become embryos, and a star wakes in each, cradled by a disk of leftovers. In the disk, rocks strike and cling, growing into planets that keep heat and water near enough for chemistry to daydream. You drink that water today. Its hydrogen remembers the first morning. Its oxygen remembers the bright rooms of ancient stars. In your glass to epochs meet and agree to be useful together. Consider how these inheritances move within you. Your stomach unpacks star-forged minerals from a meal and politely ships some to your marrow, where fresh blood cells will need them. Your lungs invite oxygen to cross into the stream, and iron chaperones it through capillaries to a waiting cell, then returns for more. Your bones lend calcium as a messenger to muscles contracting in sleep. The motions are ordinary, humble, and exact. You do not need to notice them to be made of them. The noticing is simply a kind of gratitude. If you hold a stone, you hold star ash reworked by time. The basalts and granites underfoot are mosaics of elements flung across light years and then melted, pressed and lifted until they found their way into a mountain and then into your hand. The salt in your tears is a recipe drawn from ancient seas that learned to balance themselves by dissolving what rock offered. The clarity of your bones in an image is a shadow cast by calcium that wandered from a plume into a coral, into a cliff, into a living frame. In all of this, nothing solitary happens. The star that ends feeds clouds. The cloud that collapses makes planets. The planets trade with oceans and skies. The oceans teach forests. The forests breathe with animals. You are not outside that sentence. You are a clause within it. When you move, the sentence reshapes to include your motion. When you sleep, it keeps writing beneath your dream. One slow verb at a time exchange. Circulate, settle, rise. Continuity, not ownership, is the rule that keeps the story generous. There is relief in the scales involved. A star's life can span billions of years. Your life, measured against that arc, is a bright, brief phrase. Yet the phrase is enough to carry meaning. You are a bridge. In your cells, old ashes keep their promise and become action. A hand lifted, a word spoken, a kindness done. The bridge is not grand, but it is real. Matter crosses it, turning from stored energy into gesture, and the gesture leaves warmth in the air that was not there before you moved. Because you are made of gifts, gratitude becomes practical. You treat your body as a library of stories worth keeping. You treat the world as a lender to repay with care. You look at a tree and recognize it as an accountant of breath, balancing books between sunlight and soil. You look at the night sky and sense inventory rather than emptiness, stores of futures waiting in ordinary hydrogen. The knowledge is not heavy. It is a comfort draped like a shawl, encouraging rest rather than restlessness. The same knowledge can revise urgency. You need not hurry to be cosmic. You already are. The iron in your blood will travel again when you are finished with it, perhaps to a creature you cannot imagine, perhaps to a tool, perhaps to a stone. The calcium in your bones will join a river's long handwriting. The carbon that holds your sentences will unfurl into soil and feed something rooted, then again feed something moving. Your role is not to own these atoms, but to keep them warm while you can. So you breathe slowly, knowing the fire you draw is kin to fires that once brightened a sky you will never see. You breathe out, slowly, giving back what you cannot keep. Between inhale and exhale, you feel a new kind of belonging. You are a place where ancient heat becomes thought and then turns gently back into air. The loop is complete enough for rest. The cosmos does not rush you. It only asks you to continue the exchange with a little steadiness and a little grace. When you exhale, which star are you returning to the world? The truthful answer is meant ones that ended loudly, quiet ones that drifted their gifts with patience, first light that settled into water, and the tireless sun whose steady breath keeps the green half of your breath alive. You need no map to honor them. You need only softness in your chest and a willingness to imagine time. Your next breath will be a thank you letter. Your next meal, a receipt carefully kept. And as you drowse, one more thought lands lightly. The same processes that filled you also filled the crust of this planet, the clouds of other systems, and the rings around distant worlds. Somewhere a different creature raises a different lung, and the same elements change hands. The recipe repeats with new spices. Sleep comes as you remember that you are not the first or the last bearer of these gifts, only their current caretaker. Faithful for a little while, warm as a small hearth in a vast home, underpatient. Listening stars tonight, you begin with a gentle awareness. The sky is not what it seems. It offers itself to your eyes as a present moment, but everything you see is already on its way to being history. The stars do not blink for you, now they blink from before, long before, sending messages that only arrive now, and only partially. You look upward and catch a chorus of delays. You receive the universe not as it is, but as it was, layered with memory, softened by distance. Light is not instantaneous. It moves fast, unimaginably so, but not infinitely. That delay becomes the sky's quiet secret. A nearby moonbeam takes just over a second to arrive. The light from the sun, 8 minutes. A star you see tonight may have sent its beam 1,000 years ago, when your ancestors looked up with different names for the same sky. Some of the faintest lights come from galaxies so far that their glow began before Earth had animals with bones. You are not seeing stars as they are, but as they were. The sky becomes a portrait gallery of moments that have passed, hung across vastness. Each twinkle is a message in transit, each soft hue a note in an ancient letter. And you, standing quietly beneath it, become part of the arrangement, a receiver, a witness, a translator of long-traveled light. The very dimmest points are not dim because they lack brightness, but because they have endured the longest journey. The farther a light has come, the more it has stretched. What began as blue shifts to red, and sometimes into tones your eyes cannot even catch. This stretching, like the loosening of an old thread, tells you that the space between has widened. While the light traveled, expansion does not stop for couriers. Even with this delay, the light remains honest. It carries its spectrum faithfully, the fingerprint of what made it. From it, you can read the heat of a star, the elements in its atmosphere, the dust it passed through. You do not merely see a dot. You decode a sentence, one that names its author, its place of origin, and its long endurance. Sometimes, what you see is not even the light itself, but how that light was bent. A galaxy's gravity can curve space around it, and the light from another object behind it may arrive along multiple paths, warped into rings or arcs. You are not looking at a thing, but at the way spacetime itself has whispered and reshaped an image. In these moments, the cosmos becomes its own lens. The colors of stars are not decoration, they are temperature. Blue burns hotter, red cooler. And as you've learned, dust between you and a star can shift that color, tinting a white star. Amber, a blue one, violet. So what you see is not simply the source, but a path altered by interference. It is like hearing a voice through a hallway. You receive tone and echo both. You learn to correct, to clean, to account for the dust and distortion between. You grow more patient. You stop asking only what is that, and begin to ask what happened there and when. A supernova seen tonight may have exploded when humans first learned to farm. A star that has dimmed might already be gone, its afterglow still journeying toward you while its body has turned cold. The universe does not erase easily. Light lingers. The sky is a slow exposure, and yet, in that slowness, there is depth. Each delay is a gift of perspective. You see the cosmos in layers, light from near and far, young and old, woven together into a single tapestry. You can see galaxies at different stages of life at the same time. In the same field of view, some are forming stars, while others are fading. Time is arranged spatially. Distance becomes chronology. The stars you see are not the only stars. Many are hidden, too faint, too dusted, too far into spectrums beyond your eyes. Instruments pick them up. Ultraviolet stars that burn to blue for vision. Infrared stars that glow beneath the red. Radio telescopes catch structures made of calm, cold hydrogen. X-rays find the heat of violent collisions. You look up and see one version of the sky. The universe speaks in a dozen more. Even where there is nothing, there is something. Dark patches are not always empty. They may hold galaxies whose light is too stretched to see. They may be filled with dark matter, massive, silent scaffolding that neither emits nor reflects light, but whose gravity bends the paths of things you can see. So when you look into the dark, you are looking at shape by absence, weight by effect, presence by distortion. You feel the cosmos more than you see it. When you count stars, you are not counting dots, you are counting moments of clarity. Each star is one light that happened to make it through the veil of time and distance, through dust and gravity, into your vision. And around each of those stars may be worlds, unseen and quiet. Planets that orbit in silence, reflecting light, not toward you, or too faint for your instruments, yet real. Some of them may host their own questions, their own watchers, perhaps looking back into a different sky, wondering too. The light also stacks. Some stars are too faint to resolve, but their combined light adds a gentle glow to the background. The night never falls to perfect black. It holds a low hum of photons, each one a record of something. You learn to read faintness as fullness, to recognize that what seems nearly nothing is often many things at once. Silence, too, is crowded. Even your body becomes a surface where light falls and ends. You absorb photons that have traveled millions of years, let them warm your skin slightly, and then release their heat. You are a final chapter in many stories, and you carry that heat onward in ways the light never expected. The universe touches you softly, and you return the gesture. Your memories shape the sky too. A familiar constellation may carry myth for one culture, navigation for another, nostalgia for you. The shape is fixed only by perspective. The meaning is fluid. The stars in a pattern may be light years apart and unrelated, yet your mind threads them into a story. You do not merely observe, you interpret. You name, and in naming, you participate. When you look up, you are also looking inward. You ask, how long light takes to reach you? And the question echoes into your own life. How long do ideas take to settle? How far must feeling travel before it arrives as understanding? In the delay, there is space to think. In the waiting, you learn to listen more carefully to what has taken time to reach you. Not everything you see is real. Some things are illusions born of alignment, multiple images of a single object, curved by gravity, or halos caused by ice. In the upper atmosphere, these phenomena do not make the sky less true. They remind you that truth is not always a single frame, but an experience filtered through layers. The illusion holds its own kind of information. It says, this is how the world bends. This is how your perspective matters. The moon itself is not what it seems. Its light is not its own, but reflected sunlight. It is bright because it borrows. The stars, in contrast, shine with their own energy, each one burning in solitude and unconnected. Yet from here, moonlight and starlight arrive in the same bowl of sky, borrowed and original light, side by side. You see them as siblings. You feel them as calm. Sometimes a falling star draws your eye. It is not a star only, a stone burning bright in its last breath. But you make a wish anyway. That moment, that mistake, is still a thread in the larger cloth. You accept the poetry alongside the physics. You let the error hold meaning. You learn to love the sky not for its accuracy, but for the way it speaks across time and silence. So, what are you really seeing? You are seeing memories. Delays turned into color, into motion, into the illusion of now. You are seeing distance made visible, energy given a path. You are seeing things that no longer exist, and things that do not yet exist in your view. You are seeing the universe in translation. You look at a star, and you see a gift that began before you were born, a moment that took time to arrive. You look at darkness, and you feel its thickness, the way it absorbs, hides, protects, contains. You look at light, and you learn about heat, about motion, about time. Every star is a question answered slowly. Every patch of dark is a chapter, still being written. You ask yourself one last thing tonight, not for the sake of a conclusion, but for the soft curiosity that guides sleep. When you look up, what part of yourself is looking back down?